Okay, so now we're going to attach the clock and data lines from the LED strips to the ItsyBitsy, and we're going to need to feed them through this one part of the shell. We're working on a split shell so that that doesn't have to happen. You can put it all together afterwards, but with the version, I think these are V2 is what I'm calling them, shells, you have to do that. There's a top and a bottom LED strip. So one LED strip goes on the side with the ItsyBitsy, identified by this here, and then the other one goes on the side with the switch, which is the rectangular cutout at the bottom. And so they have different wire lengths. And yes, so this one is going to go on the switch side. So you trim the black wire to, let me just get the right side here. You trim the black wire to 1 1/8 inch past the edge of the LED strip. So from here to the end, the red wire. Yep, that's 1 1/8 of an inch. And then for the ground wire, it's going to be 3 inches past the end of the strip. So from the end of the strip here to the end of the wire is 3 inches. For the other strip, which goes on the ItsyBitsy side, ground wire is the same, 3 inches, and the red wire is trimmed 3.5 inches from the end of this flex strip to the end of the wire is 3.5. So do that first so that those are all set to length. Then for the clock and data wires, the length on those for the strip that goes on the switch side is going to be 2.5 inches from the end of the flex to the end of the wire. And for the ItsyBitsy side, it's going to be 1.5 inches. And this is to allow the correct service loop so that you can actually solder it and get everything together. And you want to keep them as short as possible because there's not a lot of room inside to be able to crunch the wires in. So I've stripped the ends of these wires. I'm going to tin them. And again, as I said, there's going to be 2 wires going to each pin because I've got a clock from each of the terminal strips. Oops, my soldering iron turned off. Each of the LED strips has a clock and a data, so there's 2 wires. It seemed to me it was a little bit more robust to try to connect both down here on the ItsyBitsy rather than on the flex circuit, just because it's a little bit more fragile and difficult on the flex circuit. There we go. Iron heated up again. So we'll tin these guys. And these are going to go to the clock pin, S clock on the ItsyBitsy, and then the data pin is going to be, should be MOSI, Master Out Slave In on the SPI. So since our ItsyBitsy is the master and these guys are the slave, and we're sending data out from the master to the slaves, it'll be MO, Master Out, and we're not using the slave in since these don't talk back, but we need the master out. And because we only have, we're not addressing the strips any differently, we don't need any chip select or selecting which one. Okay, so I've tinned those. So now, if you look at the ItsyBitsy side, it's also the side with these 2 grooves on it for the switch wires to come back from the program select switch. So this one with the longer red wire was the top one. So this is going to go on here, and then the clock and data leads are going to feed through that opening where the ItsyBitsy slides in, and the LED strip will end up being mounted in about this position. These 2 wires are going to go out and back, so we'll take care of those later. And then the bottom one, the way you have to feed these wires is through that slot. And again, we'll worry about the power wires later. And it's going to be up here. So it might be handy to just kind of hold this like this. And then we need to get those wires fed through the same opening. So we have all 4 coming out this opening now. Now we're going to make sure that we have them all, we got everybody going to the right place. I'm going to get that unwrapped from there. So make sure the clocks are going to the clock pin and the datas are going to the data pin. I don't want to get them mixed up because then things won't work well. Okay, so see if I can get all those pushed through again. There we go. All right. So I have 4 wires coming through. And the ones from the bottom are the longer ones, and the reason for that is because when the board, the ItsyBitsy board slides in, they have to kind of go around behind the board, so they need a little more service loop, whereas the ones from the top, they just push right back in there, so they don't need as much service loop. So that's how you can kind of do that. So the first one we're going to look at here, let's figure out which one we want to solder first. So the pins on the ItsyBitsy are right down here. So here's S clock, which is the 4th one in from this end, and MO is MOSI, so that's master out, so that's the 3rd one in from the end. So those are the 2 that we're going to attach. And I'm thinking, since the wires are going to be going off to the right, we're going to do the master out connection first, and then we'll do the S clock. It's a little tricky holding, getting 2 wires on there and making sure everything stays connected. So I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on here. And again, you don't want this built up too much on the top. We're just going to kind of, I might as well do the S clock at the same time since we're here. Okay, so I've got some solder on there now, a little more just for, okay. And then I want to make sure we tinned those wires. So the next thing is going to be to make sure that I've got the data pin. So if you recall, the data pin was pin 1, data in, which is up in this corner of the chip. So this is the wire that's bent around here, so I can just kind of do a quick little tug and see if I can find that one. So this is a data wire here. I'm going to try to get that one out of the way. Move over. Okay, so this is one data wire, and then I have to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side to make sure I get the other data wire. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put a little kink in that so I can remember it. And then these are the 2 longer ones, and they're kind of twisted around in there, so I may want to untwist them. Okay, so that's clock, and then this is the one that goes around, so that's data. So I'll put a little kink in that one. Make sure the kink's up a little further, so it's not where I'm soldering. Okay. So now we've got our 2 data lines. So we're going to try to get those soldered on here with all this mess. We'll see how that works. Could be a challenge. I might want a pair of tweezers. Let's see if I've got something here. I don't know if I do. Very well. Let's see my tweezers. Oh, here they are. Very well. I have some along those pliers. We'll use these. Something to hold the wires. They do tend to get hot. Okay, so I need to make sure that these guys, I want to hold them. And I may just want to put a little bit of solder on these to hold them together before I solder them down to the board. But I think if I can just twist them together, like that, and if they'll stay that way. Alright, I'm going to try to put a little bit of, that's my problem. Alright, I'm going to try to do a little 3-handed operation here. Get a little bit of solder on these guys. Don't run away. Make sure I don't drip any down on the ItsyBitsy there. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, I need to get these over here and down here. See how I am at left-handed soldering here. And that looks pretty good. And again, this is where that silicone insulation really helps, because you'll notice if I didn't use that, it would have, where I was holding it, it probably would have heated up and squished and maybe exposed some wires. This silicone insulation does a very nice job. So, I've got my other two. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to twist them together. Put a little solder on them first. So, you want to make sure that you get these solder joints secure, both mechanically and electrically, so that you don't have to come back and take it apart and do it again. Oops, I don't want that much extra solder on there. Come on. Okay. Now, just takes two hands to clean off my soldering iron. All right, let me try right-handed soldering this time. So same deal here. I'm just going to come down, and I just need to make sure it's not shorting to the other pins either. Okay, and let's see what that looks like. The light here is terrible, so okay. Oop, that one's good. Okay, so there we go. And then we'll dress these other wires in the next one, but that's got everything now, should be soldered to the ItsyBitsy.